Just conscious of time, people keep joining, but let's go ahead and start today's session. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining today's session. Um, this webinar will focus on accessibility strategies for retail and e-commerce. I just want to walk you through a bit of housekeeping before we begin the session. So the session is scheduled for an hour. We have 56 minutes left, so let's get started. We welcome your questions at any time, so please use the Q&A and the chat box to drop in your questions. We have panelists that will be actively engaging and answering those for you. The session is being recorded, so for anyone who has unfortunately missed the session, we will go ahead and share the recording after the session with you. And I believe you're all in mute already, but in the case that no one is, if you can go ahead and mute yourself so we can just avoid any background and make sure that we don't have any noise going on. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So essentially, I want to walk you quickly through the agenda, right? So we're going to, first of all, actually, before that, I just want to walk you through the speakers for today's session. So obviously you have myself. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm the Retail Growth Strategist at BrowserStack. And alongside me, I have Mohnish, who's our accessibility specialist, who has been actively working with our retail segment customers here at BrowserStack. And more importantly, we have Mikeldi Cesteros from Nestlé Nespresso, who's an active customer of Accessibility Toolkit and who is an expert in the field of accessibility for the last couple of years in the retail sector. So thank you so much, Mikeldi, for joining us today. We'll hear from you in a little bit. But before we get started, just the agenda very quickly. So again, we're going to talk about why accessibility compliance matters, right? Not only for as a whole, but more so particularly for the retail segment in Europe. What do you guys need to know? I'm sure a lot of you have done your research over the last year preparing for the act, but maybe we can share some inside peeks into what we know as well. Some real world examples of the power of the results of the success of including accessibility. Obviously, we'll hear from Mikeldi himself and we'll ask him some questions about his experience and how Nespresso has thought of approaching accessibility and what the mindset is, what the vision, what the process, and what the ultimate objectives are. We'll get to the good part on the second half of the session. We'll deep dive into the demo itself. We'll try and cover as much as we can in regards to web accessibility, app accessibility, and a high-level overview of design, which is a super crucial part of accessibility as well. And hopefully we'll have some enough time at the end. Again, we'll be actively answering your questions through the Q&A chat box. However, if we have some time in the end to allow you guys to raise your hands and unmute yourselves, and maybe we can take a few extra questions as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So again, BrowserStack, we're trusted over 50,000 customers globally, over half of Fortune 500 companies. So this slide, very quickly, again, is just to showcase that we add value across every single industry and segment in the world. Today we'll be focusing on the retail and e-commerce for accessibility. Why accessibility matters, I'll go ahead and begin. Sorry, I'll pass this on to Mohnish so he can take it on from here now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. Hey, folks, thank you for joining this webinar with us. Glad to be doing the session today. So before we could jump into the specific content over here, why accessibility matters. So I would urge all you folks to take a step back and realize like why does it really matters? Is it just the compliance bit of it, or is there a bigger picture that is attached to it? So that's what I would request you folks to give a thought about it. And for me, to start with, I'll quickly start with a human reality that's there. Like the fact is put in front of you. So 1 in 4 adults in the Europe, so which is roughly like 100 million people, have some form of disability. So this is a very staggering number, to be honest. And it's also more surprising to think that each of these 100 million people are going to interact with the digital world in a different way. Say, or if your apps or websites is not going to accommodate them, then we are quite literally locking out a quarter of a population over here. So yes, this is about inclusivity, but it's also more about market opportunity that we are talking about here. So that's what the statistics actually tells us. According to the Disability Forum of European Union, over 80 billion euros a year is lost by the European retailers simply because their websites are inaccessible. So honestly, that's revenue left on the table. And for many companies, that's the difference between market leadership and being disrupted. And then comes the legal angle to it as well. So the European Accessibility Act, I'm sure of late there has been a lot of webinars that you folks would have been attending that keeps talking about EA. But one thing I would like to add here is that just like GDPR, so non-compliance here is not just a legal risk, but it can also mean damage to the reputation and the lost trust of your customers. So that brings us to the customer impact part lastly. And honestly, this is the one that really drives it home because 71% of users with disability leave a website that's not accessible. This means poor accessibility is just not a bad UX, but it's also bad for business. Yeah, again, I think the message is very clear here. Accessibility isn't just a checkbox anymore. It's going to be like a strategic advantage. That Yeah, that brings us to the next slide over here, which talks about the challenges that users face, or like especially the ones with the disability. Now we have just seen why accessibility matters in the previous slide. We'll take a closer look at uh, what exactly these challenges are. The first thing being diversity with impairments. So often uh, we think when you think about accessibility, it's normally the permanent ones that show up in our mind. It could be like a cognitive disability, visual, auditory, motor, or even speech related. But what matters here is that each of these different conditions require special considerations in design and development. For example, a person with dyslexia may need simple layouts and a better contrast. And a person with low vision might actually rely on screen readers or narrators and even the zoom functions of your browsers or mobile applications. And the same thing goes with people with motor impairment who might actually navigate the entire application or website using a keyboard or adaptive device. So when digital products are not designed with these aspects in mind, they actually become barriers. So it's not just frustrating as well, it can be exclusionary, which means a button that's not properly labeled isn't just an oversight. For someone using the screen reader or an assistive tech, it's a dead end for them. So they are it's a dead end and they are no longer able to proceed further with it. And similarly, an auto playing audio without any captions, that's an entire conversation lost for a deaf user. So, so that's what puts these challenges in the highlight. And like I said, disabilities could be permanent, situational, or temporary. And often we note about the permanent disabilities, but we also keep forgetting that age could also be a factor, or simply a person like me who's sitting in front of you and talking. I need the specs to interact with the web pages or the mobile application. So this is also one form of disability that often people miss to notice. And yeah, the point here is accessibility or accessible design is going to benefit everyone. It's not for a specific group of people, but it's about creating flexible and inclusive experiences that work in a real world. Yeah, Brian. So I'm not going to talk more about this because I'm sure you'll have heard a lot of information and instructions on how to approach EAA, why it is here and everything. So I'll just leave this slide for a couple of seconds so that you can quickly have a look at it. Yeah. So EA is not new, to be honest. So it first got launched in 2019. So it's gaining attention off late because of the deadline, which is approaching by the end of this month. So again, like already said, it's not an option anymore. So it is a compliance and companies have to legally bind to it. We can move to the next one, Brian. Yeah. So like I said, building with accessibility isn't just the right thing to do anymore. It's also smart business. So companies have seen impressive business gains by making their sites accessible. So there are multiple examples on the internet of how companies have benefited. For some, they have resulted in increased user engagement, and revenue growth has been increased for some companies, and website traffic has improved for others. So you have those examples on the screen. And just to add here, in fact, one of our customers in travel and logistic industry who optimized their user journey for screen readers, they observed a significant increase in the retail engagement. I mean, overall engagement of users across all the segments. So that's the power of designing accessible sites for digital engagement. So since that we are on this slide now, and we also have Mikeldi as our guest speaker today. So I would like to also hear his thoughts on uh, like how did they think through this process while they were approaching accessibility within Nespresso. Mikeldi, was this something you also thought more from a business angle rather from a compliance?
We took it from the business angle in this case. We didn't reach to the complaints, and it's true that there have been some, but in this scenario that we are living today, it's a business priority, let's say.
Cool. So yeah, like Mikeldi was mentioning, I would just trust on the fact that accessibility is becoming a business priority these days. It's actually beyond compliance. Yeah, Brian. Next slide.
Awesome.
Quick, a quick case study to walk you through with some real world example. And this actually highlights the cost of inaccessibility. And it's not alone in US dollars or euros, but also with respect to the trust of the customers. So here, as you could see, the challenge with one of the major US food delivery brand, a brand that we would all recognize, we all love to engage time and again. They kind of faced a lawsuit because their website and mobile app were not accessible to users with visual impairments. And the users who relied on screen readers to navigate digital platforms, the design wasn't just compatible. So it's effectively locking out them of all the experience that they could get. So this was not only poor design, but it's also a violation of the ADA. And what makes it even worse is that the response of this particular organization, instead of fixing the issue, they chose to fight the legal lawsuit, which meant it's going to be a prolonged legal battle, and high costs are associated with it. And also, one major impact with a flood of negative publicity. So they were quickly seen not only as an inaccessible brand, but also a one which is resistant to inclusion, which kind of really hurt their reputation. And like they say, trust once lost is hard to regain. So that's what is bringing all of us to this specific concept of the webinar, where we stress on the importance of accessibility again. And in this specific case, after years of pushback, they finally settled and began making improvements. But the realization was a bit late because the damage has already been done. But again, whatever said and done, the important thing here is the mindset. They treated accessibility as a legal risk, but not as a business imperative. So this is a powerful reminder for people who are delaying accessibility that it could get costly, and inclusion should be proactive and not something which is reactive.
Well said. Well said, Mohnish. And I think Mikeldi is going to share a little bit more light about how they're approaching accessibility from a business overall perspective rather than a compliance at Nespresso. So I think let's go ahead and move on to Mikeldi's session. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick pause and just launch a poll here for the audience. And we'll give them about a minute. We'd love to get your insights on this. Okay, answers are coming in. I'll just give it another minute. We're about 50%. All right, guys, if anyone just wants to finalize their answers, go ahead before I'll just close the poll in a few seconds. A few last ones coming through there. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. Thank you guys so much for participating. Just around 70% have participated. I'll go ahead and end the poll. So some interesting results. I'll go ahead and share those on the screen. About half rely mainly on development and QA efforts. So that's something that kind of goes in line with what we've been seeing lately. Over a quarter, nearly close to 1 in 3 people or organizations don't currently perform any accessibility testing. So that's something that obviously why we drive these sessions and these webinars to further educate. So hopefully you find some good information on today's session. And then about another third or just under a third do have a comprehensive strategy across design, development, QA. So some are being quite proactive already with that. So that's great to see. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and switch over to you, Mikeldi. We want to hear a lot about you and your accessibility leadership at Nespresso. You've been working in this segment for quite a while, I believe so before Nespresso as well. So I suppose maybe Mohnish, maybe let me just ask these questions to Mikeldi, and we can kind of treat it as a bit of an interview. But let's open up with why accessibility compliance matters for retail, Mikeldi. You obviously have broad experience in this industry and you've been leading accessibility efforts for a while. I'd love to get your take on this question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. First of all, well, introduce myself quickly. My name is Mikeldi Cesteros, and I work for the Nespresso HQ front-end team, and I'm currently the lead of accessibility project for all the Nespresso digital landscape. So starting with the key drivers of accessibility in retail and why does accessibility compliance matter? Let me highlight these 3 key reasons we are watching on the presentation, which are reputation, inclusivity, and legal compliance. First of all, starting with the reputation, as we know, in the retail space, customer experience is everything, meaning that a brand that's seen as accessible and inclusive builds trust and loyalty, not just with the people with disabilities, but with the wider public as well. Therefore, the world travels fast, and inaccessible experiences can quickly damage a brand's image and reputation. And on the other side, companies that prioritize accessibility on their processes are often praised publicly for their commitments to all the users, not only the users with disabilities. Second one will be inclusivity. No one is left behind. Retail is for everyone. That means ensuring every customer, regardless of ability, can browse, shop, and complete a transaction with ease. It's one of the first priorities when we talk in accessibility compliance. And having said this, when we make websites and apps accessible, we are not just following rules, right? We are opening doors. We are opening doors because we are allowing someone to do their grocery or their purchase in any of the retails in a proper way. And we are also helping anyone pretty much to buy gifts or to buy any product without barriers. So accessibility is an enabler, and it's core to digital equity. And the third, but not last, real important part on accessibility compliance in retail will be the legal compliance, right? Because depending on the region, and this falls again into a different scope because each region enables this in a different way. But failing to meet accessibility criteria or standards can lead to legal consequences, including lawsuits, fines, or forced remediation of the issues. But compliance isn't just a checkbox. It's a baseline expectation in many markets, especially with upcoming legislation like the EAA, European Accessibility Act, and some others. Being proactive now will avoid costly rework on later stages. So in summary, accessibility boosts our reputation, our company reputation. It demonstrates our company values, and it ensures we are on the right side of the law. In today's digital world, accessibility is not optional. It's a must.
Right. I exactly like the word that you used, Mikeldi. So you said accessibility is an enabler. And of course,
Absolutely.
when you enable people, when you give powers in their hands and they kind of open up doors for you, it could be in terms of brand trust, it could be in terms of reputation and the revenue part, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well said, guys. All right. So thanks for that, Mikeldi. I think the next one would love to hear about your vision, right? So you've began your accessibility journey. You continue to go through that journey, but what's the vision overall at Nespresso when you
The vision, in short, it's we are aiming to build a culture where accessibility is not an afterthought, but it's a standard. So we are trying to do this mind shift. Having said this, something that is embedded in how we design, build, and deliver experiences every time for every user, like from the beginning to the end. And going a bit through the roadmap and what is my vision for accessibility at Nespresso, we set like four steps roadmap or process in where we go through all the stages. The first one, it will be the legal compliance, and it means like 0% accessibility. That is the first milestone or the first brick we need to consider when enabling or making our websites compliant. This is like some sort of like the foundation. This legal compliance is the foundation. And we need to make sure, in order to complete this phase, that the websites that are part of Nespresso have published their accessibility policy, clarifying what is covered, what are the gaps we are currently having, and how users can contact us if they encounter any barrier, because it's our public commitment and it holds us accountable. So let's say this accessibility policy is like this part of the legal compliance and means 0% of, but it's like the first step which we should take when applying accessibility to our business. The second part will be the automated testing, the zero error standard, meaning that in this stage, we are aiming on fixing and remediating all the critical and serious accessibility issues. This will cover around 60% of the full accessibility compliance, okay? We aim for zero accessibility errors in automated audits because while these won't catch everything, they give us an efficient way to detect and fix common issues on an easy way. For example, things like missing out text, contrast problems, invalid HTML, semantics, etc. So this second step covers around 60% of the compliance. When we have achieved the zero errors automated testing, we will go to the third step, which will be like keyword navigation and focus management, which it will cover from 60 to 80% of this accessibility compliance, meaning that in the focus management state, what we are aiming is to test that the focus is effectively implemented, and also that the user is able to row the different elements with keyword or other assistive technologies. This supports user who rely on these assistive technologies or They just simply don't prefer to use a mouse. Okay, so it's really keyboard based. And the last milestone will be the screen reader optimization. For this, we will cover from 80 to 100% accessibility compliance. In this last step, we are validating our experiences with the screen readers. This it's a bit of a mostly manual process, okay? Because we need to ensure here the proper semantics, area levels are where needed, and we have a really clean, understandable reading order of the text that is gonna be read by the assistive technologies.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense, Mikeldi. And I like that it's a culture, right? It's not an afterthought. So I think that's something that really stuck with us. Just conscious of time, so I'll keep going through these. The next one is really around, okay, now that you've walked us through kind of your vision and how you plan to get there and what the steps required, when you embarked on this journey and how you're going through it now, what are some of the gaps that you're seeing in regarding accessibility testing?
This is an interesting question because beyond technical tools, audits, data, and all that we have been talking about, I mean, the real challenges often lie in how the teams work together, okay? So first of all, we have like the team alignment, meaning that accessibility isn't just a developer responsibility. It spans across design, content, QA, and even content owners, right? But too often these teams aren't aligned on what accessibility means or when it should be considered. Meaning that, for example, designers may not think about contrast, developer might not understand area, and QA may not test for keyword navigation. So without a shared understanding and expectations, important issues like fall through the cracks, obviously. The second one will be the ownership definition. For this second most common blocker or challenge is not knowing who owns what, who writes the alt test, who verifies hidden structures, who is responsible when a component fails a screen reader test. Without clearly defined roles and responsibility, accessibility becomes everyone's job, which often means it becomes no one's job, right? So so this is some big challenge. Another big one will be breaking silos. At least it can apply to Nespresso in this sense because it's a very siloed based company. So accessibility work often happens in isolated pockets, right? Because one team is doing a great work, but maybe some others are not or don't know what they are doing or aren't involved. Okay, this creates inconsistency and slow down like the progress. We need to break these silos to create shared tools and foster communication within teams so that the accessibility knowledge and practices scale across the whole organization.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean to make a bit of a statement about this slide, I would say like the gaps aren't just technical; they are organizational, right? And closing them means building a stronger collaboration within teams, clear ownership, and also a more unified culture around accessibility.
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely. Entire mind shift, an entire culture shift.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And also,
Mikeldi. Sorry, go ahead, Mohnish.
no, sorry. One thing here to highlight from what Mikeldi was explaining, right? So breaking silos and bringing different teams together, brainstorming could also lead to a lot of different approaches that organizations could take so that this accessibility gap can be addressed as an organization rather than working in silos. So that was one good point. I thought it has to be highlighted. Thanks for that, Mikeldi.
Yeah, I wanted to add up a bit here, and is that in our case, we prepared strategic guidelines per role, meaning that we have strategic guidelines for UX, for UI, for developers, for QA, and even for content owners, meaning that we are trying to I wouldn't say limit the responsibility, but try to ensure that each role is aware of what is on their plate, right? So this way, they creating this awareness, it's helping up a lot to breaking this silence and pushing on the mind change.
Absolutely. And it's hard work, right? But it's necessary.
It is because well, the people usually they will try to say no, but this is not my no, but now it is, right? This is part of the culture shift, right? Making the people to own what is on their end.
Of course. And Mikeldi, last but not least, before we get into the demo, I wanted to ask you about, shifting left, right? We talk about shifting left in software testing for many, many years, if not over a decade. How do we shift left with accessibility in the mindset, right? How do you integrate that with SDLC?
How to integrate the accessibility and shift-left testing, right? This starts with a mindset. We have already talked about it, but accessibility is not a final QA checkpoint, but a core design principle from day one. The goal in Nespresso is to build a culture where accessibility is not an afterthought. Having said this, in order to get it integrated on the software development life cycle, UX and UI design should be considered from the start of the development process. So like right at the beginning, because this is where most of the gaps happen, and that's why they were like carried forward into later stages. So in UX design is where everything begins. Accessibility starts with the structure, ensuring user flows, navigation, and interactions, which should be intuitive and inclusive. That includes thinking about keyboard paths, clear focus order, and avoiding cognitive overloads. Involving users with disabilities early through research also helps to validate inclusive design choices at the UX level. Moving on a bit more further, when in the UI design is where we embed the accessibility into design systems, color contrast, font sizes, component behaviors, and semantics. Therefore, designers should test with color blindness simulator, plugins in their Figma tools, and use accessible contrast checkers and do the proper annotation of the components with the expected accessibility behavior, such, for example, area roles, states, or keyboard interaction details or annotations in their Figma designs. The third stage will be, and here is the second, but because UX and UI are part of the same part or the same process. On the development phase, at the coding stage, developers must implement semantic HTML area where needed and ensure full keyboard and screen reader compatibility. Automated testing should run as part of the CI/CD in order to capture tiny regressions and with zero tolerance for basic accessibility errors, meaning that the user should ensure that they have zero errors on the development. If something it's happening and it's out of their charge, you should always push it back to the UX or UI team asking for a solution, because in the end it falls on their ownership, right? Next up will be like QA testing. QA must go beyond functional testing and validate real accessibility behavior. QA can do automated tests, but they are gonna go through some manual ones, right? Like tab order, visible focus, screen reader, output, and especially like things like error announcement on forms, etc. So having said like manual testing with assisting technology becomes essential in the QA testing, in the QA phase. And last but not least, the content owners, who are the ones who are going to use the digital products, they need to ensure that every single provided field, such as alt text, meaningful link labels, transcriptions, and plain language are in place. Like content is often the last mile of accessibility and easily overlooked. Okay, so empowering content owners and training them is critical. So therefore, in short, by covering all these phases, we move accessibility left proactively, not reactively, and pointing out again that it's a shared responsibility. And by embedding the accessibility into our software development cycle, we don't just meet standards, we build better products for everyone.
Of course, of course. And that makes a lot of sense. And actually the next poll that I'm about to pull up will give us a little bit of insights into how our audience are approaching accessibility and who they feel is responsible So thank you, Mikeldi, for really walking us through that. Super valuable insights. I'm sure there'll be some questions for you towards the end, but thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and launch that poll that I just mentioned. So I'll give you guys a minute. Be keen to see which team currently owns or drives accessibility compliance within your own organizations. Okay, we have a mixed bag so far. It's good to see that someone has selected design. So that's always positive. Some answers, no team is currently responsible. That's something that we've been hearing for over a year, so that's why we're here to help. Let's give a few more of a minute.
Yeah, surprised to see no answers on complaints.
Yeah, so far no answers on complaint. I'll share the results in a second, guys, but so far no. That is I mean, it depends how you approach it, I guess, Mohnish, because compliance team wouldn't be driving accessibility, I suppose. But we've seen it all across different retail sectors, so let's see what the results are here. Surprised to see no external audits neither. Usually some companies outsource the initiative. I'll go ahead and finish the poll, guys, and I'll share the results. We're kind of tight for time, so I won't comment too much, but I think you guys can see the results there with the majority going to QA and development. And I think the fact that design or that no team is currently responsible is on the minor stages. It's something that we're striving to help you guys with. And I think Mikeldi's session about how design should begin from the offset rather than an afterthought is something that hopefully you guys find valuable insights on. So let's go ahead, and before we get to the demo with Mohnish, Mohnish is going to walk us very quickly through the accessibility solution that we have here at BrowserStack, how it can potentially help you, but also our unique Spectra rule engine and how it's the best in the market. So go ahead, Mohnish.
Right. Thanks, Ben. So, yeah, like we were discussing, we would like to incorporate accessibility into every phase of the SDLC. So that's the reason for us to have this accessibility testing start right from the design phase, where we have a Figma plugin to scan your components and layouts and ensure that you ship accessible design to your development teams. And of course, the dev and the QA are the heavy lifters in most of the cases, at least for the, I mean, within the audience that we have today. So to help them ease out a bit, we are having multiple features for them to test and monitor accessibility on a continuous basis. In fact, we integrate with the CI/CD pipeline they have. Without having to write a single line of code, you'll be able to test accessibility using the SDKs that we have. So that's what we have to offer. And the core of everything is the in-house built, patented, and a BrowserStack proprietary rule engine, the Spectra rule engine, which can offer a broader coverage when it comes to the WCAG guidelines. So exactly the numbers are on the screen. So this is the coverage we do today. 38 success criteria are covered as a part of automated coverage. At least 86% of them is automated in one way or the other. And if you compare this with any other open source tools in the market, so it is 2x or easily 5x better when compared to critical issue detection. Yeah, Brent. And the best part is we are also using AI of late. So we have introduced success criteria where AI can help you capture not only WCAG related issues, but also more from a user experience perspective, understand the contextuality of the issue, and help us to flag those issues which are missed out by other tools in general. So we are putting AI into good use over here. And we also have a lot of other success criteria queuing up for release in this month and the successive months, where AI is going to help us drive the vision for accessibility. Yeah, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Mohnish. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can begin the demo on your side.
Right. So probably the best way for me to start is with the design flow, like we discussed. So I'll quickly share what the plugin can do for us, the BrowserStack design plugin, and I hope folks are able to see my screen.
Yeah.
Quickly. So this is applicable for both your website designs and for your mobile app designs. Uh, the process is going to be very simple for both, except for a few nuances that are there between web and mobile application design. So quickly, if I launch the plugin on Figma, so there'll be two options that the plugin will present before you. So the first option is to scan the layout completely, and the second option is to do a component level scanning. So this way, like I said, you could ensure that you ship accessible components and accessible wireframes to your dev teams. So if I quickly scan it, this will ask me if it's going to be a website or mobile. And once the scan is on, all the Spectra rule engine gets into work, and this will group down issues for you. So these are the segments we have broadly classified. As you could see, you can do color contrast. Specifically, that it can differentiate between text and non-text contrast. And best part is you'll be able to group it all and solve for it all at once over here. So you could see the guidelines are also given. And going forward, you'll also see suggestions with respect to what color could be used at the foreground and background so that you have a better result over here. And of course, like you all think, it's the AI that is going to do all these suggestions, and other aspects or auto editing suggestions where it could automatically recognize the headings on your frame and it helps you to annotate. And as you keep doing it, this will quickly form an annotation layer. And this acts as a dev notes. Like whenever the development is going to work on it, they can code it accordingly. And of course, you can add the landmarks to it. And one other important factor is automatic focus order assignment. So if I quickly select things randomly and show you how it works. So the Spectra rule engine will understand the logical flow of information. So the top-down approach and left-to-right approach, so it automatically understands it and it'll annotate it in the specific order that it has to traverse when keyboard-only users are navigating through your website. So this is another important aspect, and you could alt text to the images that are there. And most importantly, it also asks ARIA suggestions to certain roles for your buttons or checkboxes that you have on your frames. And when you do all this simultaneously, an instruction or annotation document also gets generated. So this will be very handy in your design dev handoff. And most importantly, like we said, it's a empathy-based tool. We are approaching accessibility more from a user experience perspective. So we have different color blindness conditions simulated over here. So users can just try to replicate any of it, and they could see from the eyes of a color blinded person how the colors that you're using will be visually appealing for them. So this is with the layout scanner. Quickly moving on, in the interest of time. Yeah. So you could also use this plugin to scan all your components. So these are the components that we support today. So let's say you select the specific frame, click and scan on the components. So this will give you automatic suggestions on what are the possible issues that it has founded on the specific component that we have selected, and also a few suggestions in cases where it's not able to flag it as an issue. So this is by default checked for AA and AAA standards. And when you go to the mobile side of things, Android and Apple guidelines also gets added up over here on top of AA and AAA criterias. So yeah, so this is our way to ensure that designers are equipped with the right tools. These are something that they usually juggle between different tools and do it. We have compiled into a single tool, and we have AI put into works where they could make use of it and reduce a lot of effort from their end and finding out the accessibility issues. And I'll quickly share a quick demo on the app accessibility and web accessibility as well.
Sounds good.
Okay. So with BrowserStack, what you get is that we have a lot of real devices that are on the BrowserStack cloud, which you can make use of to test your native mobile application. So it could be an Android app or it could be an iOS app. You just have to launch a device, and one of the devices from our cloud servers appears on your screen. And whatever engagement that you do with an handheld device, you'll be able to replicate that on a real device on cloud over here. So for the starters, you could upload an APK file, or you could just install an app via the Play Store or App Store for iOS if your app is publicly available. And once it is uploaded, you'll be able to scan the application for accessibility issues viewport by viewport. So you have a plethora of guidelines. All the WCAG guidelines are supported. You just have to choose which guideline, save the setting, and quickly start scanning. A screenshot will be taken, and you'll see all the issues highlighted on the right hand pane over here. And if I quickly show you how the dashboard is going to look like, meanwhile the issue gets loaded. So this is how the final view that you'll have. A mix of critical, serious, moderate issues, which gets automatically populated by the intelligence of Spectra rule engine, and a category-wise deduplication happens as well. And if you want to get into the details of anything, you could just go, you could see the screenshot on the left along with annotations. If you expand, you'll have the success criteria that is violated and what are the details of it. And if you click on view details, you will see the complete description and the element details. So basically everything that a developer would require for him or her to solve the specific issue. This gets automatically integrated with your Jira or your Azure, and of course with your pipelines as well. In case if you wanted to do an automated testing and look into a build-wise report, you could do that as well with BrowserStack. Yeah, so I think we have the test results over here. So you could just quickly save on report from the top and continue scanning. So this is on the app part of things. So quickly navigating to the web part. So on the web part, things are pretty similar, except for the fact that you're going to scan your real websites, and you're going to have all the results on the central dashboard over here. So website scanner is an interesting option where you could continuously monitor your websites. You just have to key in your URL details and put your websites to continuous scan. So when you do that, let me quickly show you a report. Uh, you get to see the issue trend and the resolution trend as well on top of the accessibility issues. So if you take one of the retail brands as an example over here. So I can just elaborate and I can view report by report, or there's also an option for me to compare between different reports from the past. So ideally, this will give you a good data visualization in terms of how you are progressing towards resolving the critical issues and how your resolution has been throughout the timeline. So this is a broad list of data that you get, and there are other options as well. Like I said, I'll quickly wrap up with one final bit. Let me quickly show you AI in action. So here you see that little star. So this indicates that AI has spotted this issue. So in places where the contextuality is missing, let's say for alt text in this context, you would see how AI is going to read your current alt text and compare it with the image in question and suggest you a better alternative text, which is appropriate in the specific contextuality of the image in question. So this is some interesting work that we are doing with respect to AI, and we are also enhancing it to cover the other success criteria as well. If you wish to learn more about it, the more interesting features that are coming up, we would be happy to connect in the coming days. For the interest of time, I would just open the forum for any Q&A that you might have for us or for Mikeldi.
Thank you so much, Mohnish. And yeah, let's go ahead and do Q&A, but just super quickly before we do that, I just want to do the last poll and just kind of captures just people's interest on whether they would like to see a further deep dive demo of the solution. So I'll allow 30 seconds or so for our audience to go ahead and complete that, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. But thank you so much for that, Mohnish. Appreciate that was quite high level. The AI piece is super interesting and it's new as well. So I'm sure some of our customers and some of our audience today would like to see more of that. All
Thank
right. So, okay, this one is nearly finished. Just give me a second. By the way, we do have a question pending in the chat that Rohit has opted to answer live. So Rohit will come on and answer that question. But guys, just before I close the poll, just if there's any other questions that you want to put in the chat for the last 6 minutes, just let us know so we can go ahead and answer those. I'll go ahead and end the poll. Thank you guys so much. Very high interest in seeing a demo, so thank you for that. I'm glad that you find the time useful. I'll go ahead and end the poll, and let's go ahead and begin the Q&A. Rohit, do you want to go ahead and begin with that question, or will you do that, Mohnish?
I think the question is more for Mikeldi to answer. So they are more interested to know how Mikeldi is approaching or Nespresso is approaching. So yeah, if Mikeldi could answer that question, so that will be great. And of course, we'll add our thoughts at the end. So the question here, Mikeldi, is like, do you ever test with real users that have accessibility needs? And this question is from Ariana.
Hello, Ariana. We haven't actively, as of now, considered this, but from now on, because as part of the mind change, it's going to be one of the priorities will be to use or to test, better say, our products, either apps or web, with users with disabilities. In the past, we have brought some users with disabilities to create awareness on the development teams. However, from now on, this is again will be part of the roadmap to test effectively the products we develop with real disabled users as part of the pool of users that are part of the user testing.
Makes sense. Thanks, Mikeldi. And I hope it answers your question, Ariana. Is there any other questions, guys? Just while we have the last few minutes, anyone wants to raise their hand or anyone wants to put it in the chat, please go ahead. So, Mohnish, any final thoughts?
Yeah. I think we have one more question. So I see the BrowserStack design toolkit is in beta. When do you plan to release it, and what are the pricing models? So yeah, to answer that question, right? So it was in beta, and we have made it public right now, and the GA for design toolkit has been scheduled for the coming months. So very soon you'll have a announcement from BrowserStack making the design toolkit live as well.
And I think it's important to emphasize that, Mikeldi and our customers will be good testament for this, is that when we go into alpha or beta before GA, we really go through a thorough window of testing, of validating, of getting our customers' feedback from the field. A lot of our enterprise-wide customers, like Nespresso, like Nestlé, like many others, give us invaluable feedback that a lot of the times causes us to alter and better features. So the reason why sometimes beta or alpha takes a while is because we're actually making sure that by the time we do GA, it's the best product out there. But we're very excited. I already saw an email this morning. We're very soon to making that announcement. But even with that, the beta version has provided tremendous value in our existing customer base. But we're very excited for GA anyway.
Yeah. Looks like there's another question for Mikeldi. So the question here is, how long are you looking at taking this journey with accessibility?
That's an interesting one. Well, in our case, because we have a very fragmented solution, the journey can be, estimating it in a really high level, it could be around 2 or 3 years to fully implement it. Again, we are talking about not only websites, but several applications and so on. So yes, the roadmap can be up to guesstimating like around 2 or 3 years easily in order to get like full 100% compliance across all the digital landscape.
Yeah, I think this also ties up to the cultural shift aspect that you kept mentioning throughout the session. So, like we said, accessibility is here to stay, and it's a continuous and an ongoing process. Uh, there are enhancements that are going to happen to the guideline, and with new technologies and AI and everything, I hope that uh, the websites or any digital platform for that matter is equally available for everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, so I think we've run out of time. We'd encourage you to please populate any final questions. We'll be capturing that data in the background, and we'll be following up with you to make sure those questions are answered. For everybody who attended and for those who also missed today's session, we'll be sharing the recording, so stay tuned for that. And thank you everybody once again for your time, and thank you, Mikeldi, so much for being part of today's speakers. We truly value your partnership and we love working with you.